Welcome to the Zia Studio Buzz podcast. My name is Doc, and I am coming to you from the beautiful desert of New Mexico. And this is a podcast where I chat about mainly knitting and yarn and about all of my other makings that are happening here at the time. It's been a while and I've missed chatting with you. My husband and I, we decided that we needed to get out, and so we took a wonderful trip to up kind of northwest. We went to Colorado and Utah, and it was just beautiful. We spent a lot of time outside. Not so much hiking because it was really too hot. I mean, not that we're the big hikers, but it was just really hot while we were there. But we were outside a lot, and it felt really good to do something and to leave the house. And also, I feel like, I mean, right now so many businesses are hurting, so to go somewhere where you're conscious of what's going on, but not careless, and at the same time you're supporting the economy that's hurting so much. So I felt like that was a good thing, even though traveling is not quite as relaxing, I feel, as it used to be, because because there is something going on, and you have to be careful and conscious all the time, and it just takes away some of that pleasure of traveling. Yeah, it is what it is. We have to make the best of it, I guess. But back to knitting, that's what we all love to talk about. And I wanted to start off with the shawl that I had already shown you finished in the last episode. And I will scoot forward a little bit because I feel like I'm very far away from you. So I have since then blocked my Madame Papillon shawl, and it is every bit as beautiful as I expected. It grew nicely, and it's a perfect size right now, and I'm still in love with the color. I don't want to bore you with any repeats about the details about this, but it's also up on my Ravelry, where I'm PAPERDAG, and I can't say that enough. I would love for you to friend me on Ravelry, because I live in my friends' activity feed. I just love to browse there, whatever you've been up to, and that's really it's almost like flipping through a magazine. And my project page is pretty well updated, so if you want to know something about needle size and so forth. I just wanted to repeat that I did make the size, I increased the size of this. It would have ended here, but also I need to mention that I chose to use a smaller needle size. And whatever my alterations were, they changed, and in a kind of wrong way, the lace pattern. And you can see that here. This element is not symmetrical. But when I got to this point here, I realized, hey, in order to get the tip of this to align these two tips, I have to change something here. Whatever I made up, I cannot even tell you. I did not take note of this, And so I don't know how I did these things. Everything happened kind of intuitively, except for making sure that this was aligned, which then caused the asymmetry in this area. But I must say, I'm normally very obsessed with making everything kind of like not frogging when something doesn't go right. But with this, I felt like I can live with it and it's not going to bother me. It's not going to be one of those things where I feel like, oh gosh, I wish I had changed it. I hate this, and where you always stare at that spot. In this case, it's nothing where I'm like, oh darn, I wish I would have changed that or done that differently or anything like that. It's beautiful as a whole, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. The Madame Papillon. And then I wanted to show you another shawl that I just finished, which made me extremely happy. And of course, I have talked about it before. I have used my handspun yarn to make a shawl, which is sadly not available for the English-speaking folks out there, which I assume you are. And so it's called Elfenstille, and the designer calls herself Fadenstille. She has a blog also, and when you go to Ravelry, you can, if you decide to make the pattern from Ravelry, it links you to her blog where she writes up the pattern. And I used a handspun yarn, and you have seen this before. And it is now finished, and oopsie, my progress keeper got stuck here. Hold on. Don't want to rip it out and do some damage here. No, it's just some fuzz. Okay. This is where I was when you saw it last. And so you see I knitted a lot. And of course, you can imagine, I knit when we travel. So there was a lot of driving. And so it was just nice to knit and continue working on this. I have made this with 4mm needles. Again, you will find on Ravelry what that is in English. I can never, my brain usually only deals with the metric system, so sorry about that. What I did here is I did a bunch of changes. I decided to start this with a garter tab, which was not given by the designer, but what was even a bigger change is that I omitted some pearl rows that went down here. So I didn't want to do those, because you must know that this yarn is such a joy to work with, or was, that I just wanted to knit and knit and knit for the longest time without thinking about any patterns or where to place things and such. This handspun was made into a 2-ply yarn from carded bats, which I carded, and what I used were fibers which I bought in a destash. So sadly, I do not know what sheep they came from. This yarn is extremely soft. It had a great elasticity. in the skein. It was over dyed in the lock very subtly with a red, so you can actually see this just ever so slightly. At least I hope you can. I can. And at some point I said that there was a green and a blue in it, and that was not true. I don't know, it must have been something. I just got it mixed up with something. So no green or blue. But also there are these tiny bits of red, like here. I hope you can see that. Yes. So that was the yarn. And the elasticity was what I think gave me a kind of like a denser fabric than you would have expected from such large needles. I mean, kind of large for a fine 2-ply yarn. So that was very interesting, yeah. Another thing that I changed was I just did not pay attention to where I would start the lace. I did not stick with the pattern. I picked the chart. She has different charts, and of course you could do that. You could make a triangular shawl and then go to the blog, go to that pattern and just use the charts and to make up everything else, or use kind of like a standard triangular shawl recipe. So I just had to count from the center, as you see here. This is where my pattern repeat starts. And then I had to count backwards to know where my pattern repeat is when I come from the edge of the shawl. And I knew that I had a few extra stitches here. I hope you can see this, and I hope I'm making sense. In the pattern, you're not supposed to keep the middle spine, but I wanted a tip in the middle, and she also does not want you to keep increasing on the sides, but again, I would prefer that because I just, normally then a shawl would end like this. And of course you can block it out just a little bit, but I just like tips better in lace shawls. So I winged it. And I must say it was a very intuitive process, because there are certain things that you just know, if you make a yarn over here, there has to be a 2 together, a bit over, and yeah, it was not hard. As well as this edge down here. You can see there's a lot of 2 togethers and yarn overs, and it was also my way of lengthening the shawl that I improvised, because I wanted to use up all the yarn, all of this beautiful yarn that I had. I did cast off with a tiny bit of yarn all the way across that I had in a separate mini skein, and I'm not sure if that's actually visible, that it's ever so slightly lighter in color. But my yarn management worked out very well, because this is what I had left over from the main body of the shawl, and then with the mini skein that I used for casting off, it had a knot in it, so I wound that separately. That was that, and I used this to cast off, and yeah, ever so slightly lighter color, and it worked out fine. I can see that it's lighter because I know it, and if I look for it, and that's why I chose to use only this for casting off, yeah. I blocked it with blocking wires, and I just love that so much. That worked out very well. Yes, very little leftovers. At some point I weighed the amount of yarn. I weighed my yarn at the beginning and at the end of a row, and that way I figured out, oh darn it. Did you hear that? It was a little hummingbird that flew into the window. I filled up our feeders, and now these guys go crazy. And sometimes they fight out there, and then when that breaks up, sometimes they just fly the wrong way towards our big windows. I'm actually thinking if I have to move the feeders somewhere else, because that's already the second or the third time, and sometimes they die just because, yeah. Okay, the hummingbirds and the elfin shawl. But if, in case you wonder what in the world is she wearing, there is string hanging off of her, and she has these little things on her shoulder. What is that? Yes, I am indeed working on that shirt that I showed you a little while ago. I apologize. Sometimes my gaze passes the eye of the camera to the mirror where I see actually what you see in the picture, because for picture quality's sake, I work with this weirdo setup with a mirror behind my phone. So, back to the shirt. I showed you this a while ago. I found it in the closet. I had always had the idea that I was going to alter it. I made this up a little while ago. Well, actually not a little while ago. It must have been at least 3 years. And I knitted a very square, it was a very square top, simple, and I wanted the drapey neckline in the front. But then I added a little sleeve. And my mistake was that my sleeve, I had a baggy top, a square, short, baggy top with a square, wide, baggy, very short sleeve. It just did not work. So you know how you're frustrated. I had the yarn store had the shirt for a while because they wanted to show how the yarn knits up, and that was great because I didn't want to see it anymore. But now I got over it, and I picked it actually really back up and decided I have to work on it. I brought it on our trip, and I worked on it actually while my husband did a little extended hike at Chaco Canyon where I near melted, and I sat in the running car with air conditioning because it was too hot for me, but whatever. That's where I ended up finishing my changes. While I was at home, I had already frogged the sleeves, and oh yes, the other thing that didn't really work so well was that drapey front neckline, because you can probably imagine with the shoulders being wider, when this sits here, it's of course not as drapey as you see it now. So when I thought about what am I going to do to change it, I thought it doesn't really need sleeves. It, but it would be nice if it got more drape in the front. So I'm going to do kind of like a razorback, and I will then see how it works to keep the front as it is. Because if I had kept the original shoulders, it would have been a lot better for the drapey front to increase more on the sides. My increase was probably like 3 inches from here to here. I mean, maximum, maybe even less. So that was just clearly not enough, but it was a try. I don't even know where I got the idea. Maybe I looked at a shirt and at the construction of a shirt, and that's how I got the idea of how to make this work. So I decided on the razorback. It took me 2 tries. The first time my curve did not look right, so I had to change that. That was not hard because it's not a lot of knitting, 3.5 millimeter needles. And this is what it looks like from behind right now. Really good, I like it. However, you may also say, hey Doug, this is too open of a sleeve opening. So this will be my next step. I just thought I'd show you in between, because what I will do now is I will yet again shorten the back, probably by 3 inches, 2 to 3 inches, I would say. I'm still keeping a little bit, I'm gonna redo a little bit of a neck opening. Sorry, yet again, do I stare outside? Because now I need to make sure what that animal is that I just saw, because our cats are outside and we wouldn't want them. Oh yeah, it's a deer. Now I saw it. Yeah, always worried about coyotes jumping over our wall. Okay, where was I? So I will shorten the back. I will rip back a little bit and again work a tiny bit of a neck opening. Keep everything else the width where I am, and so keep it close to my neckline, but also then I will take away a little bit of material, of knitted material in the front, and which is going to be about the same, 2 to 3 inches. And then I will reevaluate, and I assume that it's going to be right. I mean, my daughter said that I would be fine the way it is now, but I don't feel comfortable with it now. So I will change that, and I'm excited about it, because what I noticed was I say that I usually hand knit garments are too warm for me in summer, because it gets hot here. I mean, on the inside I can get away air conditioned, but not outside. But this, with the way how open it is here and being very wide at the body, I think I could wear this. I mean, not in 100 degrees outside, but yeah, right now, I think it would be great. So I like this actually, and I have some bamboo yarn that I've already been eyeing to make another one, possibly. Yeah, because I think it turned out nicely, and I don't even think I will do any kind of binding. I don't think it needs that on the side as well as in the back, so really excited about it. And I did want to show you one more detail. So the shoulder is about 5 stitches, and I attach, these are hair clips by the way, I attach the side of this to the back shoulder, not the top of my cast off, which is by the way just a straight cast off. Yeah. So much about this. Staying really excited. And really happy with this. And then the other thing that I finished while we were gone, and I say finished, as you know me, as usual, I still have my ends to weave in, but I finished the second one of these shorty socks where I used yarn by Jinx Yarns, and I've mentioned it, Laura is not dyeing anymore, but if you love her yarn like I do, you can totally look her up on Ravelry and see if you find her yarns in a de-stash, which was a coincidence on my part when I found this yarn. Yeah, bought on a de-stash on Ravelry, which brings me to something that I did want to mention. I'm kind of like, right now I have to say I am very sad and about what's going on with the criticism on Ravelry. And what upsets me is really not that it's a criticism and sometimes a creative criticism, which is always necessary for growth. But I feel that often Ravelry is bashed in a way that is not justified. Some people got together years ago and have changed our knitting world by thinking about how we can all be brought together and how we can connect the people, but also make patterns more accessible, also like show what knitters make and help others to learn from it and help us get organized. This was for the longest time without them having any kind of income until they started implementing things like when designers sell through them, they get some money from that, but they have in no way deserved what they get from some people right now. And I just want to make a stand here for Ravelry. I am very sorry if some people cannot use the new layout, or if it has caused them any kind of problems. Personally, I liked the very bright design, and I thought, well, it's kind of nice. I tend to get stuck with what I've done, with the way I've done it for a long time, and so I hate change. But I thought, hey, I'm going to use this, whatever. I'm going to, make it work. I'll get used to it. But what happened then was that I just couldn't find the friend feed. And like I explained to you earlier, I just love seeing what my friends make all the time. And it was not, I couldn't find it where it was before, and it was hard to find somehow. I managed to find it, but then it's like, oh, this is way too complicated. I don't like this. So I did switch back to the old design, but everybody can do that. And hey, they need to know from us, and they're doing this. Yeah, but that's all. I don't want to get into this too deeply, but I just thought I have to mention this. I am really, yeah, I love Ravelry. I will stay there, and I will. I hope that in the future also the patterns will be all patterns accessible there. Yeah. Okay, that was that. Where was I? Now I got so distracted. Oh yes, the D-stash. Back to knitting. I finished my sister sock. This was a half skein of yarn that was gifted to me from Vicky. Thank you, Vicky. And I added a mini skein which has a bit of a glitter here, and I wanted to start the second sock right away. But then, I mean, this happened also when we were traveling, but then the mini that I had picked, when I touched it, I thought, oh, this is really a lot more scratchy than this guy. It was also a glittery one. And so I thought, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to start the second sock when I'm back home. And I did look for another glittery skein, and gosh, I'm not 100% sure who gave me this beauty. What does this say? Hey, Holly Ho Hum Polar Lights. Glitter. I'm sure I got this in a swap. I've done a lot of mini skein swaps a few years back, and it was such a fun thing to do. So this will be, I think it's going to be the ribbing for the second one. Sometimes I'm still thinking, oh, maybe this is too much color. I'll see. You will see too. That was this. Oh, I meant to show you this. This is, by the way, already how much yarn I have left from my reconstructing here, and I sadly don't know what yarn it was, but it was definitely a blend with linen and with cotton. All right. Last knitting project, and here I must thank a friend, because remember how last time I showed you a few things that I have lined up as future knitting, where it's also already the pattern combined with the yarn, and that they're all in a drawer here in our dining room cabinet. And this was one of them, where a friend of mine said, you must knit this. This is going to be so beautiful. So I'm like, okay, if you say so. So, and I am talking about the honeycomb shawl by Kirsten Kapoor. And hey, look at this. I really think this is not necessarily something where you're like, oh yeah, I have to make this. I don't think the photo is too flattering. I mean, even though it's black and white, you cannot see too much. But I saw the shawl in person at Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival at the Miss Babs booth. And that's where I fell in love with that pattern. Hold on one second. I'm back. Yes, so it started at the Miss Babs booth at the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival. And then I thought, I want this shawl. And I picked my yarns at the festival. And except for the solid color, which in this case is a light color, I hope you can see this. And in my case, I chose Marigold Jen, this olivey browny color, which is called, I thought so, no, See, I always want to say peanut butter brittle, but it's peanut butter fudge. And this is on her yak 3-ply sock weight. 20% yak, super lovely soft yarn. So that's the one that I carried all the way through. And in the pattern, it suggests to use a gradient set by Miss Babs. The set would have 6 different skeins, maybe half skeins. I'm not sure how that would be, but I didn't want to do that, so I chose to use 3 colors. I can't recall how the sample at their booth was, if it was 3 or 6 colors. And I don't recall anybody saying that they have gradient sets for the shawl, so. But I'm always so picky. I'd rather pick my colors individually than go for a set. So maybe that's what I did. But I did want to mention it because if you want to knit this, you shouldn't be thinking, I mean, just so you know, it talks about color 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but color 1 and 2 are my color 1, color 3 and 4, my color 2, color 5 and 6. You get what I mean. Just one little thing that I also wanted to mention. There is a fault in the instruction because right at the beginning, at the first note, where it says the gradient set is referred to as color B. However, it's referred to as color A. And so that's what I usually do. So I wrote color B is my Marigold Gen and color A is my, varies in my case. And I showed you yarns last time, but I did switch 2 of my colors. So my initial color that I showed you last time was the Marigold Gen, and I also kept this one, which was a Miss Babs. And that is called, let me pull out that tag. It's the Miss Babs Babette Soul Food, the Yummy 2-ply. Excuse me, Soul Food is the colorway. Really, really love this. But the other 2, I chose this one, which was also a vacation souvenir yarn that I grabbed at Jimmy Bean's in Nevada in Reno. And this one also a very special yarn, which was a gift from a friend who brought it for me from Ireland. Thank you. I'm using it. My friend said, Therese, you said you had the tag, but we never got around to it, or you never told me what the yarn is and who the dyer was. So, but I'm super happy. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I don't know who the dyer is, but I know it was gifted to me with love, and it came all the way from Ireland. Beautiful. And a great fit, as you will see when I show you the shawl, as far as I am into it. Such a fun project that you do not want to put down. You start here, and then it's just one of those where you keep knitting and knitting because you want to get to the first honeycomb section. Then you keep knitting and want to get to the point where you introduce the next color, which is my Irish yarn. And then it just changes from the honeycomb to the stripes and honeycomb again and a little bit more stripes. And it's just so fun and beautiful. Love my colors, love the pattern. One thing is, the only thing that I'm changing, you know me, I love to change things, and I was very tempted to slam in a stripe of this bright green here in the last section, but I held back. I thought, I'm gonna be a good girl, I'm gonna stick with the instructions. But what I am changing is I am gonna keep knitting until I run out of yarn, because I feel like it is a little bit smaller as in the picture of the pattern. I feel like my honeycombs are smaller. You can totally see it on the picture. But even though it will block out, of course, because it's pulled together with the slip stitches, but yeah. So right now where I am, I showed you already, so the way this last section is worked is you knit two rows with this color and then 4 with this. And I think I have a few more, probably like 3 more rows, and I think the original pattern would have ended the shawl already. I want to say probably 2 honeycombs back, so this is where it would have ended, and I'm just going to keep going. Yeah, put it on a large needle so I could show it a little bit better. I mean, it's already a very substantial size, but I already have these left. I haven't weighed them. It's probably, I would say that's almost 50 grams, almost half of the ball. But I want to use up at least as much as I can of these guys. That is my honeycomb by Kristen Kapoor. I wanted to start 2 more things, and I've run into a bit of problems. Yeah, which is kind of like, I just gotta deal with it and figure out what I'm gonna do, which will happen. But I really want this sweater. If you remember, I showed you this neon yellow, and I already put it all into this bag, and I picked a pattern which for a very simple sweater, which I love, and where I thought, hey, this is going to be great, a simple sweater. This is it. Let me show you. There's a great picture on the back also. But who would have guessed? It's a DK sweater. The gauge is 21 stitches on 10 centimeters with 4mm needles. Then I thought, well, maybe I'll see what my gauge is. Maybe I can get away with making the largest size and using 3.5mm needles, so going down 1 size. My gauge ended up being 29 stitches to 10 centimeters, so that's 8 stitches more. And but also I went down 2 middle sizes. I went down to 3mm needles to get a fabric that I like. And let me show you the yarn again. This is Zia Wool's Dreamcatcher. Put your shades on. And here is my swatch. Of course, you see only a bright yellow square, I would assume. For me, when I look at this, I see that this is very kind of like loose. I mean, it's nice and all, and you could probably get away with it, but I feel like then I would always have to watch what I wear under it, because it's, oh, can you see this? Oh, I just like this fabric better, and it's still not stiff, it's not hard or too firm. So my next, excuse me, my next step after my gauge was so far off was to look and see if I couldn't find a sweater where the gauge is a better match. And wow, if you go to Ravelry and you start a search for a sweater or a cardigan with lace yarn or a light fingering, even with that, you get so many more where the gauge still doesn't match, and where you have only a very, very limited amount of patterns where my gauge would match. And so I decided, hey, whatever, I will figure it out a different way. This is only going to be my guideline. I see, hey, I like a sweater. As I always say, I wanted to have tight sleeves, but my idea is also to put a lace pattern on the sleeve, and maybe then have only 3/4 and the sleeves kind of here, 3/4 sleeves, and have a nice open neckline, because that's also something that I like. I'd rather wear a shawl than and be not so tight here at my neck. So a friend of mine, a German friend of mine, she was like, I said, so can I talk? We were in this Zoom knitting meeting, and I said, hey, can you guys, so am I thinking this right? And I talked about my complicated way of figuring out how to convert the stitch count, because I thought, I'm probably going to stick with that stitch count. I mean, with the neckline here. So, and she's like, oh no, what you got to do is, and I'm making up numbers here now. She said, if the designer tells you to cast on 120 stitches, you're gonna, and the gauge is 20 stitches per 10 centimeters, you're gonna do 120 divided by 20, and then you multiply that number with your stitch count. So if your gauge is 30, then you're going to do 6 times 30. So I would have to cast on 180 instead of 120. I'm already getting dizzy with this high number of stitches, but you got to do what you got to do. And my idea is actually, to figure out a lace pattern kind of similar to this. I think I would like this. Yeah. Maybe. I will see. I've already gone through my books and I didn't find anything that I really liked. I did find something actually, and then I wasn't sure if it was knitted in rows or in rounds, and I would have to have something in rounds. And then I had to convert it, and when I knitted a sample, it did not work out. So I'm probably gonna drop that one. Okay. That was the sweater, but you may remember, and to finish the sweater, you will see how this is going to proceed. And this will be started with 3mm needles, because if I start this now, then maybe I'm going to have it at the beginning of next winter. No, I'm just kidding. But you know how I am sometimes. I get very excited about a project, and then I get very excited about the next project, and the first one gets forgotten. As you may remember, I have a few more things that I had been working on and that I haven't touched in a while. So, but it is what it is. You may remember more yellow. I needed yellow in my life. I needed light. I needed sunshine. I needed cheerfulness. And so I decided I was gonna dye up on my new super gorgeous and amazing honeysuckle base that contains 20% silk and 10% cashmere. I just added that to the Ravelry database. So I wanted to use this and make yet another shawl. I'm kind of a little bit shawled out, but then again, whatever. It's just a nice one. I didn't know. I didn't really want to go for a sweater with this right away. I wanted to use it in a shawl. And so I looked through my patterns in my queue, which I have a lot of favorites, and I have a category in my favorites that's called maybe queue. And then there are also just the favorites that are gorgeous, simply gorgeous, I think I named that one. But my queue, into my queue goes what I really want to make. And this is a pattern by Sue Berg, who is, as she writes, not native English speaking. So I'm not sure where she's from, Sue Berg. The shawl pattern is called Larimar. And this is actually up on Ravelry as a free pattern, which I think is just so sweet and generous from the designer. Yeah. So she writes that for the shawl, she used a lace yarn that has she apparently used only 50 grams. Can that be? Apparently, that's how it looks like. 50 grams have 547 yards, exactly 500 meters. But since this is not a lace yarn, I knew already that I was going to go up a bit in the needle size. And her instructions, and I'm not giving away anything that, I mean, it's a free pattern anyways, but I did want to talk about this. She gives 2 size options, which you get with the different needle size, but only a 0.25 millimeter size difference. So one would be, you get a shawl size 1 meter 50 by 60 centimeters with a needle size 3.5 millimeters, and the other one would be 1.6 meters by 65 centimeters, and that would be done with the 3.75 millimeters. So now I probably could be, to keep it as airy as she writes, I could probably even go up a little bit more, but I've talked about that. I don't want it too loosey-goosey. So I think I will go for the 4 millimeter needles, and then I was already kind of panicking. I thought, 1 meter 60, that sounds small. What if yet again my shawl turns out smaller than the given measurements? And I thought it doesn't matter, because what I will do, let me show you how one pattern repeat looks like. She has a very nice picture here of one pattern repeat. Sorry, I just wiggled the camera. So you just count your stitches and knit until you have enough to add one more of these guys. And yep, so my initial doubts, they were resolved. Oh, that is so funny. Check it out. Her ending looks very much like what I made up for the elfin shawl. What I kind of made up. See this? That's so cool. Wow, that was easy too. Okay, this will also jump on my needle soon, because we are in a pandemic and we can cast on whatever we want and what makes us feel good. Right? Okay, that was the Larimar by Sue Berg. And what else? So this was what I wanted to cast on but have not cast on. It's almost on the needles, because I finished 2 shawls and a pair of socks. I can totally cast on something new anyways, pandemic or not pandemic. Okay, I have also finished the spinning project that I told you about in the last episode, and I made this beautiful skein. This is a 2-ply yarn, and I had carded up some bats as a sample for a future larger quantity spin. And I then discarded these bats because they have a green in them, and as I was the green that, if you remember, was initially intended to go into my rock yarn, boulder yarn, I should say, colors after a boulder that I love, my favorite boulder out there on the trails. But when I carded that, I mean, I love the look with the natural gray that is alpaca and also some other wool fibers, but it was a very, how can I say, slubby, nubby, and I was not too happy with that. Then I wanted to card it again, and I thought, that's going to be a pain to do. So while I also do not like spinning this too much, I must say that in the finished yarn, I love the green blips. Maybe I should reconsider. Maybe I should just from time to time put some in there. I don't know. But the yarn turned out great. And just so you know, for those out there who love the look of handspun yarn, maybe because they also want to make a hat or something that's a little more natural in a way, I will from time to time in the future add skeins like this to the shop. I am very in doubt about how to price them, because I feel like I want them to be affordable, but where can I find the middle between getting a little bit for my work, but yeah, and the material, of course, but yet having it not horrendously priced where nobody can afford it. So I will see. I still need to think a little bit about this. Yep. That's my hand spun. And also, as you see, I have a mini skein, because sometimes you have left on one of the bobbins, you have some yarn left after you plied it together. So what I usually do, if it's not too much, and in this case it worked, I make an Andean bracelet where you wind the singles yarn from your, start holding it like this, of course, and then you wind it around the wrist and to your middle finger, around the middle finger, back around the wrist, and go around the middle finger from the other direction. In the end, you have this bunch of yarn and you take it off the middle finger, and then magic happens because you can spin it. You can ply the two ends together, and that way you don't have any leftovers. If you're interested in that process, I'm sure if you Google Andean bracelet spinning, or even look it up on YouTube, you probably find plenty of videos. It's just a great way to use up every bits of your hand spun. So, and then I was also doing some sewing. It all started off with one of my daughter's friends asking if I had any more of my pencil pouches. Especially when the kids were younger, I used to make a lot of those for sale because I wanted to, for sale cheap, or also for my kids to give them to their friends as gifts. So I've made some with musical notes for my son and his friend, and whatever. Fiona usually now picks her fabrics because her taste has changed a lot, and I keep making them. And so this friend said, hey, Fiona gifted me one bag many years ago, but now I'm about to go off to college and I would like a new one because the old one is not going to last for long. And so I thought, hey, these are what I have, is kind of like too childish, cutesy wootsy. Dang, the girl is going, where's she going to? Harvard or something? Whew. So I decided to sew a few more pencil pouches, and I was just really pleased that it means a lot to her, and that means a lot to me. So she's going to get that as a gift, of course, from me. And that's already done and gone, dropped off at her house. But that was kind of, for me, the starting point to do some sewing. And I wanted to show you something that you have already seen. It was a gift that I got from a friend, this amazing, beautiful bag, which was the perfect complement to the way I store my needles, because I have the hanging thing for my circular needles. Then I have another bag. Where is it now? Too bad, I don't have it here. I have my system for my Chow favorite circulars, which I could also take on a trip. But then my mother got me an interchangeable needle, just one, at the flea market, and I love the material so much. It's one of those rainbow woods, and it's so smooth and slick, and I love knitting with that. So I started adding some more needles to that, and a few more cords. And then when my friend gave me this, I thought, dang, this is going to be so perfect for those interchangeable needles. I'm a little bit too chaotic to buy a whole system, like a whole bag from one of the companies that are out there. So I've never wanted that. But for these needles, I've been adding a few from time to time, like knit picks. That system matches. My mom got me one from Lana Grossa in Germany, or I think it's Knit Pro. I'm not sure. I got some from Lana Grossa, and Knit Pro fits. And the other thing is that and in America it's, gosh, now I can't remember the name again. It's Knit Picks and another one where it fits. Oh yeah, wait a second. Just got two Knitter's Pride. Those also fit. So I got those recently. But this is how the bag looks like. really beautiful felt fabric. And I just found out from the designer of this type of bag. The name is Bodolina. It's a German company. And she, in response to the German podcast where I talked about it, she said that this one is the travel version, which is kind of a little bit smaller, and that's why it has limited compartments for needle tips. So when I added on more needle tips, I was fine with my cords, with the cord storage, and it has this beautiful zipper compartment, and this is where I keep my tool, and I have extra tools back in here. But the 6 compartments for the needles, that was not sufficient. So I had this great idea that I will sew something to complement this wonderful bag. And I have made 2 of these. I am not very good with sewing bias tape, but I think still this turned out really great. I have written the needle size on the bottom with a fusion pen, which is one of those that you can, when you iron it, it goes away. So this, and in this case, these needles I'm working with, but I didn't think it through perfectly, because this compartment I would not have needed because nothing fits in here. Because 3.5 is the thinnest interchangeable needle. But here I spaced it out evenly, a little bit more, adjusted, correct for the needle sizes. So that's the second one that I made. Oh, this is even a bit thinner than the other one, and it's higher. Oh, whatever. What I did was I put in some iron-on firm stuff that makes it stiff. I mean, you can still bend it, but not too much. And so, but this fits exactly in here. I'm going to put it in because I do need 2 hands. That's how perfectly it fits. Kind of really slides in only because I put that stiff interfacing in there. And now you see how it sits in here. It's awesome. Yes. Love, love, love. And like I said, the company name is Bodolina DE. And I'm not sponsored by them. This was a gift from a friend. But I did talk to the woman, the owner of the company. She, like I said, she responded to my German podcast where I talked about my thoughts. Can you see this? Hope so. Okay. That was part 1 of this sewing. No, part 2. I did the pencil pouches, I did this, and then I made a lot of bags, project bags, which will, in the course of the next week, go into the shop. I have to say that please be patient with me. It sometimes takes me a long time because it's very time consuming to take the pictures from both sides and the inside, but I thought I'm going to show them to you, so if you see something where you say, oh, I love this, then you can be on the lookout, and you know what's going to be in there. So hopefully by the next podcast, all of these will be in there. And it's a big stack because what I usually do is when I get going, I cut more fabric, and so some of them are ready to go. Then I'm like, oh dang, I want to use this fabric. I've never used it for a bag. Let's do this. And then I cut more. And so it's kind of like this snowball effect or an avalanche thing, you know, where you start off with one bag and then it develops into this mass of bags, and then you have cut like 20 bags, and then you're like, oh dang, yes, I do need to. Man, those birds today, what is going on? That was another hummingbird running into the window. Hi. Yes, so then you need to, of course, make the straps, because all of them, this is what I want to tell you about my bags in general. This is how I make project bags. They all have that handle strap that goes on your wrist. Usually 99.9% of those are long enough to carry the bag on your wrist, and they have a velvet ribbon on the inside. That's a matchy thing. Inside I usually use what's the word, flannel fabric, which has kind of evolved just from the need of differentiating the lining and the outer fabrics, because my lining is also cute and it needs to be cut a little bit differently. So I wanted to avoid to get those mixed up, and it's kind of like turned into this standard thing. And none of my bags have interfacing. So if you prefer to have stiff bags, these are not for you. The advantage in my book is that they're very washable. My bags go everywhere. I use them for everything, not just for knitting. And I use them, for example, I have some for my cables when we travel, the chargers, or of course, I have always something in my purse. It's right there. Oh, this is the pencil pouch size, look. This was one of the super early ones my company name once was a long time ago, Sheep on a Spring. So that was that label. And yeah, that's the pencil pouch size. So they just, I mean, this is old, 6 years, 7 years, and still going strong. Just even though you wash them all, sometimes a lot. So, but that's the general thing, and they come in usually 3 sizes. Sometimes I make a sock project square also, but usually I have the sock size, which I enlarged a little bit. I hope this is not boring for you. So I enlarged my sock size by 1 inch a little while ago, so some of them still have old sizes. The old size, some have the new size, and then there's a shawl size, which also is very generous. And then I have a sweater size. And so now I'm just going to show them to you. And I will not show you the lining, because that just, then this was, you'd not want to see that many bags. I have so many bags. Here's the hot guys. And always, usually, no, 99.9% of the times, I make the back different from the front. I use a different fabric. And here, so this is something where I can already tell you this will go into the shop discounted, because the zipper got messed up. Can you see that? It's not right. But I always top stitch the lining to the zipper, so the zipper doesn't get caught. Route 66 with Albuquerque on it. Here is one of those where I use the same fabric for the back, but of course in a different spot. The mermaids. Oh, I gotta show you this lining. Sorry. Even though I just said no lining. Love this so much. The mermaids. Often I change the zipper color like you saw the other one, but here it has a green zipper. Frida. This is also one of the ones that will be slightly discounted because of a zipper mistake. I just don't like that when it's unevenly close to the inner part of the zipper, if that makes sense. So cute. Some are more cute, some others are more like cool, whatever. This is, by the way, the older format, just tiny bit smaller, but still generously sized for socks. Another Frida. One of the very neutral ones. Very New Mexico. Green chili. And sombreros and cacti. Yeah, sadly those pinup fabrics, they just don't always work, but here it's kind of like more of a tractor bag than a hot guy's bag. Not sure what I'm going to do with this guy. It's a totally off size. Mini, more of a notions bag. This is already in the shop. The zombies, as well as this one. I know because they have the tags. This is such a cute fabric. The cats on the yarn. More cats and yarn. Oh, that's one of the rare square ones. The only one in this batch. Sundays. One of my favorite fabrics. You've seen me using my project bags. My project bag with this fabric. Not sure if I have this one active right now. May not, because it's so Halloweenish, even though I use mine all year long. I love the witches, the pinup witches. Cowboys. This is the shawl size now. We got the shawl size. And the witches, by the way, were sweater size. Oh gosh, this got crunched. This is a great match. This fabric is like water bubbles. And there are some silver shiny ones in there. Perfect. And I have this. Last one. All right, guys, this is it. I'm going to say goodbye now, and I thank you so much for watching. Thank you for spending some part of your day with me, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon. And until then, I wish you happy knitting. Bye.